everyone, welcome back. I'm going to try my first time mixing my lime plaster. So you guys know, if you've been following us, this is like our favorite measuring tool. The important thing to keep in mind about mixing a lime plaster is the ratios of the lime to the sand. What I am using is some sand from our sand pile. I did sift it through an 1/8 inch screen to get some nice fine sand. And I like to use that. A lot of people say make sure the sand is sharp, because those sharp edges will help hold everything together. Playground sand is nice and round and smooth, so your little kiddos don't get skinned knees or skinned elbows, but you want a nice sharp sand. So everything I've seen, everything I've looked at, everything I've read has basically two proportions: 3:1 sand to lime, or 2.5:1 sand to lime, or 2:1 sand to lime. So I'm going to go ahead with a 2.5:1 sand to lime. So that's what I'm going to do today, and we're going to try that with our first batch. What I'm basically going to do is all the places where the cob plaster has sloughed off, I'm going to use this as like a chinking at first, and in about 3 days, hopefully if we don't have any rain yet, I'll go ahead and do some more plastering. So I'm going to just make a basic 2.5:1 on my sand to lime in this wheelbarrow. I'm going to use my hoe and do it that way and show you what I've seen on some of the videos that I've watched. So I've got 5 of my red buckets of the sand. I'm going to put 2 of my red buckets of the lime powder, and that will be my 2.5:1 ratio. And before I add any water, I'm going to mix it. My dry ingredients. Get them even. You can kind of see there's a few little clumps of lime in there. Some people will screen that lime, get it broken up a little bit better. That's probably what I should have done. Make sure that it's all mixed. No pockets of sand, no pockets of lime. Also, everybody I read and viewed videos of did the same way. Sand in first, and then lime. Now I'm going to put 1 part water into this. See how it looks, and if I decide I need more, I'll add some more. So since I used 5 containers of sand and 2 of the lime to get my 2.5:1 ratio, I'm going to use 2 of the water. Why is it not pouring? I got a kink. Had a kink. And some more mixing. What I've been told too is if it stays on your hock, I don't think I'm going to use a hock, I'm just going to work out of the barrel today. I might get to where I'm using a hock later, and it doesn't really slide off, then it's a good moisture. So I think I got it right. It seemed a little wet at first, but I think it's good now. Alright, one thing too some people do, particularly for the under layers, the undercoats, is add some fiber. I'm going to add some straw, get that mixed in. And they all say you don't need a whole lot, so I'm not going to add much. That does help with strength. Since this is the first coat going on, I'm okay with the long straw. All right, we've got this tarp up here just to help protect in rain on this spot. This is that north wall. And this spot was causing some seepage into that bathroom area, that large area that I had to take down. I don't want to take these off. These are just weighing it down and keeping it pulled out. So I'm just going to crawl back in there, and then I'll show you when I get to this part here when I do that chinking. But I'm going to do the chinking. Oh! Clear back in there, and then I'll move on and I'll do some others. The everything I've said to or read to says don't do it in direct sunlight, keep it covered so that the moisture content stays pretty high as it slowly cures. Who knows, I might decide to go get the hawk. Oh shoot, I forgot to wet the wall. So I'm just going to mist it, not get it as aggressively wet as I did inside. Any cob too should be moistened so that they don't compete. Okay, I think I want to go get that. I'm working on this spot here. I will have to get a piece of plastic to cover it. I do have some pieces left. But I do want to tell you that I know if you've been following us for quite a while, you know that when I was doing the cob on the outside, that at one point I said that I was going to put boiled linseed oil on the cob to do the water seal. This is kind of like that fluid architecture that I keep talking about. I honestly think I was just afraid of the lime plaster. So after all the outside is done with lime plaster over all this cob, then I'm going to do lime wash, and that will make it water resistant. So hey, weather resistant. And also, I think I was just worried about what type of lime. I'm using type S hydrated lime. Get at the big box store. Pretty cheap. There are a lot of purists who insists that you use quicklime, which is extremely dangerous, or use NHL 2.0, 3.5. Those things are so hard to find in the United States. Very hard to find, very costly to ship. Some people are really proud of it because, you know, it's a natural plaster, and it just didn't make sense. So I continued my research, continued seeing what everybody put. A lot of people just said lime. A lot of people said hydrated lime. And then what really came down to it, I think, is that it's really type S hydrated lime. So the biggest thing that I found out too about using type S hydrated lime from the big box stores is that they recommend that you should use it as fresh as possible. So don't buy gads of it when you're starting your build and let it sit for 3 or 4 years. When you get to the point where you're going to need it, go buy a few bags or however many you think you can do in a weekend or whatever you're going to do, and use it that way. That way you're always using fresh lime and not having it sit here. What I'm using has been sitting actually in our storage container for probably about 4 or 5 months, so that might be a little bit too long, but it's going to work, and that's what we're going to go with. So the lime wash will brighten it up. You can see it's kind of gray right now. It will dry lighter than this, but it will stay gray because of the sand, and then that lime wash will brighten it up. So we'll decide if we want to add any colorant to the lime wash. The thing with that is lime will always make that color paler as time goes on. So in order to get a deep color, you really need to add a lot of pigment. So we may just add a little bit to give it a nice tan look, or just leave it white. That white's going to help with reflective qualities of the sun in the summertime, so that we can help keep our house even cooler. So that'll be good too. All right, so I've started that lime plaster chinking on the outside in some of those places where the cob has sloughed off in these rains for a monsoon. The first batch, I used the ratio of 2.5 sand to 1 part lime and 1 part water. And that made it a little too loose for me. It still worked, but I had to work it for a little bit. So the next batch, I made 2.5 parts sand, 1 part lime, and about 3/4 of a part of water. Got that mixed up real well, and then added about another 1/8 of a part, a little bit more water, and that got it to a better consistency for me. One thing that I had forgotten is that our sand is still holding a lot of water from the monsoons because it's just a big pile of sand outside. So that might have something to do with why the full part of water made it a little too wet. So anyway, the recipe is that you can make changes to suit you, but the best recipes, or the most common, are that 2 parts sand, 2.5 parts sand, or 3 parts sand to 1 part lime and 1 part water. So pick one of those different sand ratios that you might like to try and see which one best suits you. And then I would say start not with the full part of water, but start with about 3/4 of the water, get it really mixed. If that's a little too dry, add the rest of the water, or add what you feel you need. So that's a nice lesson to learn. And yeah, it's going great. The second mix, where I'm not adding as much water, is working out a lot better than that first batch where I had the full part of water in it. One thing too, I think I need to get a little vinegar because I got some lime stinking my arm a little bit. So I'm going to go grab some vinegar and dab it on some of these spots. And remember to have that ready and available. Usually a 50-50 vinegar to water would suffice, but I'm just going to grab a gallon and keep it handy with some paper towels to blot. So we got another half inch or so of rain last night. This is some of the lime plaster chinking that I did. Everything looks pretty good. Did have some cracking, but you have to keep in mind that it's pretty thick back here, and this is an undercoat. Oh, that's a little soft, so a little worried about that. But for the most part, it stayed. One spot did lose the plaster, but not a very big spot, and it was the last spot I did before I finished the other day. So I think it's going to work. We just have to wait for monsoon to truly be over, and we've got more monsoon rain coming all this week. 70% plus chances of rain for the rest of the week, and today is only Tuesday. So we won't be doing much on the house. We are expecting a lot more rain this week. It's only Tuesday, like I said, and we got over half an inch yesterday afternoon, last night. Today we have the potential of getting another half inch to 1.5 inches. Same for tomorrow, Thursday, Friday. Some of those days won't be that bad, I hope. Normally for our area, McNeil, Arizona gets a little under 13 inches of annual rainfall. Before yesterday's rain, we were at just a little under 17 inches. So we're on our way to about a 20 inch just for monsoon, which puts us, 8 inches-ish, 7 to 8 inches over our annual rainfall. Normally we will get rain in late December, January, but usually it's not much, just a little bit, barely an inch. But if that turns out to be anything like this, it's going to be another tremendous rain season. Good for the soil, good for our plants, good for the native grasses, good for all that, good for our aquifers. But it's very frustrating when you're trying to do a build and things keep getting put on hold because of the rain. I can't put lime plaster on in the rain. Can't put mud plaster on in the rain on the outside, on the exterior. But that's one of the frustrating things about doing this kind of thing. We're really happy that we're doing it, but it is frustrating. It's keeping us busy. It's keeping us out of trouble, if you will. That kind of thing. But frustrating, difficult to keep our motivation up. So yeah, here we go again. More rain. That's going to be it for this week's video. Remember to like this video, share it, and subscribe. And we will see you next time. Bye.